Welcome to the Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles people who are passionate about what they do for a living, what organization they belong to, or the community they are a part of. Here is your host, Dave Cunningham.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone, and welcome. For more than half a century, Jean Gillespie helped shape the lives of thousands of young people through scouting in Kingston and the surrounding area. She was a leader, a mentor, a traveler, and perhaps most importantly, a tireless recorder of local history. Jean passed away 25 years ago, but her influence hasn't faded. Her name still comes up in conversations, in photo albums, in campfire stories, and in the pages of binders that carefully preserve the story of scouting in this community. On this episode of the Kingstonian Podcast, we're remembering Jean through the voices of those who knew her best, her son Alan and her granddaughter Jennifer. Together we talk about what drew Jean to scouting, the thousands of young people she worked with, the adventures that took her across Canada and around the world, and the legacy she left behind, one that's still being felt today. Alan, Jennifer, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today, and particularly since we're getting the opportunity to get a family's point of view on Jean and what she's contributed to scouting and how that all worked out with respect to the family. Jean passed away about 25 years ago, but her name still comes up constantly in conversation when people are talking about Kingston scouting. And before we get into the details, I'd love to start with the person that you knew. When you think of Jean, not the scouter, but the person, what comes to mind first? Jennifer?
My favorite person. She was my favorite person.
Mm-hmm.
She's my grandmother. I spent a lot of time with her. We did a lot of things together. And, I still think about her every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, she loved to travel.
And that's what you like?
Yeah, well, yeah, she liked to go new places.
Mm-hmm. What type of energy did she bring into a room when she walked in the door? Was she that kind of person or more laid back?
I think more laid back.
She was pretty laid back. You know, I feel like the energy, I always felt calm around her. She made me feel like I was her favorite person and I was the most important person to her when I was around her. So I always remember a feeling of calmness when she was around.
She loved her grandkids. She spoiled them.
That's true.
She was a good grandmother.
Yeah.
What was it about scouting? There were all kinds of organizations around town and in any community for that matter that people can get involved with. She seemed to gravitate more to scouting than anything else. What was it about scouting in general that attracted her?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't know. She enjoyed her time there at the Cub meetings and all the things we did outside of scouting with, like, we'd go tobogganing and stuff. Mm-hmm. So the Cubs might meet on a Thursday night, but on Saturdays or Sundays, in the wintertime, they'd go to Fort Henry Hill and go sliding down the hill. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, so she loved just doing stuff.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with her about this because as a granddaughter, I think that I was the oldest granddaughter that lived close by. I had older cousins that were female that lived outside of Kingston. But I remember having a conversation with her that she had 4 sons and she joined scouting as a way to find more common activities with boys because she didn't have any daughters herself. And then as her kids grew and left scouting, she just knew that she had such a community there and such good friends and that she could join her love of travel and meet people all over the world. And I think that's what drew her originally, was to find a commonality with her own 4 boys. Mm-hmm. And then she just loved it so much and had such a community, she stayed after her kids grew.
When I was doing some research for this, I read somewhere where it was Ian, Alan, your older brother.
My oldest brother,
that came home one day from Cubs, I think, and said, "Hey, Mom, they let parents come in and help." And then she was drawn in to start reading stories. Is that how it all started in 1953?
I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened. I think Ian had probably heard from a school chump about Cubs, and when Mom took Ian to the first meeting, they handed her a book. said, take that group over there and teach them the highway code or whatever it was. And then she never stopped going after that. She went back every week. Mm-hmm. She felt like she was helping.
The highway code?
I think that's what it was. I'm not sure. Whatever it was, something teaching the boys, teach this group of boys, and they handed her a book, and she just read the stuff and taught it.
The way she went?
And she kept going back every week.
And that was the early 50s, as I recall.
Ian was born in 44, so yeah, 53
somewhere
maybe, something like that.
Let's take a break from talking about specifics and sort of tell folks who may not know too much about scouting just how it all works out. Now, scouting is international, and I imagine that different organizations in different countries approach this different ways, but this is the way it was laid out in Canada. So we have different groups of kids, and it started off being just boys, but now girls are involved in scouting as well. Mm-hmm. So it's an age thing, right? So we start off with beavers.
There wasn't beavers then. Beavers didn't even come into being probably till the 80s, I think. Late 70s, maybe, something like that.
Okay.
So that was younger than Cubs to get them started, but
I don't think they had beavers when I started. Either.
No, they didn't have beavers when I was. It was just Cubs and Scouts.
You realize we're just telling people how old we are.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So Beavers right now is designed for kids who are 5 to 7.
Yep.
And when they get together in what they call a colony.
That's right.
Okay. Then we go to Cubs, which used to be the starting point, but now is the second level up.
Yeah.
And that's 8 to 10. And kids are involved in a pack.
That's right.
And then we have Scouts, which is 11 to 14, and they're in a troop.
Yep.
And then we have venturers. As we get older here, we're into 15 to 17-year-olds, and they are in a company. And last but not least is the older crowd. Between 18 and 26, they're called rovers, and they are in a crew. So I gather that Jean spent most of her time in Cubs when she was working with the kids
almost
directly.
Exclusively with Cubs.
Okay. What was it about the age group, do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know. But that's
Maybe
that's what she started, and that's where she stayed. Yeah.
Maybe it's because it was the first group that you could get involved with.
Yeah,
at the
I
time.
guess so. Yeah.
And there's a lot of history of parents who get involved in scouting with their kids when their kids are in that particular group level. And then when the kids get older, a lot of the parents just stay in the group that they started with and get introduced to new kids and move on. There was something I read that Jeannie said at one point that she figured it out, she had worked with over 2,400 kids.
I believe that.
Yeah, easy.
When you think about that number, what comes to mind?
Well, there's always new ones coming and old ones leaving, right? So it's just a steady stream. I don't know if the Cubs are as popular now as they were in the 60s, like when I went, or even the 50s. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, just a wide range of influence that she would have had on all of those kids.
Yeah.
You know?
One of the things that I've found, too, is that if you have a particular teacher or leader or volunteer who makes a big impression on you, it's something that you remember for a long time. Any stories about people coming back and saying, I remember when I was in your pack and we had such a great time, and now I'm 35 or 40 and I still recall you. That kind of story. Did you get introduced to any of that as a family? Did Jean ever talk about that?
Not that I recall. I do know that when I was involved because I was in Ventures and Rovers, I was always introduced as, this is Jeannie's granddaughter. This is Jeannie's granddaughter. And everybody, I love Jeannie. Like everybody, even now, people, when they find out, like if I see somebody in scouting and I'll mention that she was one girl, I know Jeannie. Yes, I knew Jeannie. She was lovely.
So when they said that to you when you were in Venturers Rovers, then they found out that you were Jeannie's granddaughter.
Yeah.
That meant that you had to behave.
Yeah, well,
otherwise
yes,
it would
of course.
get bad.
But I was immediately loved because they loved her. And they were like, of course, Jed knows what she's doing now.
Yeah.
I had no clue. They just assumed I did because Jeannie was my grandmother.
Yeah.
There's one thing that the youth in scouting and the volunteers really love, and that's going to jamborees. Mm-hmm. And in general terms, before we get into specific kinds of jamborees, what was it about jamborees that Jean liked?
The travel, meeting people from other countries. She wasn't going to jamborees when I was still involved. because maybe she couldn't afford to travel then. I don't know. But it was later on that she started really going.
And she went to a lot of them.
She did.
Yeah.
One of the jamborees that she had a big part in getting started, from what I've read, is what we call in this particular area of the country the International Brotherhood Camporee. So for those folks who may not be aware of it, this is a jamboree that involves scouts from Canada, scouts from the USA getting together and alternating where they have the camporee. So one year it's in the States in a park called Wellesley Island, which is not very far from Kingston.
Yep.
And then in Canada, it's in a park down in Morrisburg. And it's been there for quite a while. And this camporee's been around for over 50 years.
I got the opportunity to go to that one in Morrisburg with my grandmother one year. Yes.
And what did you like about it?
Oh my gosh, it was massive. So many people. And we couldn't move more than a couple campsites before somebody would stop to talk to her. Yes. She knew a lot of people there.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
And this, from a size perspective, it's anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 kids who get together all at once for a weekend.
Yes.
And one of the big things, and I tell this story because I think it speaks to what the camporee is all about. And one year, a group that I was involved with had a young lad from South Korea who came to Canada, and he was sent here by his parents to learn English, and that happens quite frequently. So the minute he got here, he found out there was a scout troop where he was staying. He joined. He could barely speak English. And we said, okay, well, we're going to the Brotherhood Camporee at the end of the month. Do you want to come? So, of course, he was really excited about coming. But here's a fellow who was like 11 or 12 years old who barely could speak English, and so we sent a couple of our scouts out with him to do what's called badge trading, which is very popular at this camporee.
Yes, it is.
And I think the scouts would spend the whole weekend doing nothing but trading badges if they could. And so they all get together in the middle of a big field and do this kind of trading. So we sent him with a couple of other kids to do this, and once he got the hang of it, he was off by himself. He would just go and do trading. So the whole atmosphere of people taking care of somebody who's different and new, and then him being able to figure out exactly what was going on. Now, she was involved, Jeannie was involved in the startup of this camporee, wasn't she?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know.
Way back when? Did she have a sort of a feeling as to the success of this and how it's lasted as long as it had, and at her point, and then the number of people that came? Was that something that was in the back of her mind? Did she talk about that?
She was very humble. I don't ever remember having a conversation. She would never take credit for something like that. She would never have the conversation with us saying,
no, she wasn't one to brag about it.
Yeah, no, not at all. So I had no clue that she was part of starting Brotherhood. Yeah.
And it would have been after I wasn't involved, so I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great weekend to go with her.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You went to Wellesley Island too, didn't you?
No, I never went into the American side. I only ever got a chance to go to the Canadian side.
Okay.
A lot of memories about rain coming down as you're trying to set up a tent.
Well, I have a photograph of a friend of mine who came. She was in Ventures and Rovers with me, and it hangs in my hallway, and it's her and I standing at Brotherhood in our rain gear, and you can see how wet we are. And yeah, it hangs in the hallway of my house from that weekend.
Now, Jean left to travel, and Morrisburg and Wellesley Island wasn't going to cut it.
No.
I mean, she wanted to go further afield than that.
Yes.
And in scouting, there are typically jamborees within your own country, and there are jamborees internationally. Now, do you have a sense as to where she traveled in Canada? Well, we know we have a poster in front of us, and we know she went to Calgary. Or to Kananaskis in Alberta.
Yeah, to Alberta, for sure.
I don't know of the others. I know she was in Europe, Scandinavia. I can't remember if it was Sweden. Somewhere over there. Yeah.
One of the Scandinavian countries.
One of the jamborees that was there.
Did she have a favorite location as to where she loved to travel to? Anything stand out?
That's a great
No,
question.
she let the grandkids choose.
So
that's a good story.
It is a good story, actually. So my grandmother, she loved to travel. She thought it was important that the grandkids should get a chance to travel as well. So, and we had 20 How many grandkids are there?
Gosh, don't ask
20,
me. I'd have to
21 or
sit there and
22
count them all
grandkids?
out.
So her rule was that when the grandkid turned 16, they could go on a trip with her anywhere in the world they wanted to go, and she let the grandkid choose where they wanted to go. So when I turned 16 and it was my turn to pick, she had recently been re-diagnosed with cancer at that point. So I would have loved to have gone to France, but I said to her, I want you to pick your favorite place and I'll go anywhere you want to go. So we ended up going to Bahamas, the two of us, on a trip. So I know that she loves the sun and the warm, and that's what we did. We got to spend our 7 days in the Bahamas together.
This all started 1974. One of her co-workers at Alcan, who was also a scouter, Howard Jackson, he was working in Jamaica for a year with Alcan. So she had saved up money to go down there for the March break. Well, it turned out Alcan said, well, if you're going to be down there, would you mind staying an extra week and doing some work for us down there? And they paid her airfare. So she took me with her with the money she saved. So I was 17 at the time. And then that started it. After that, she took everybody for their trip wherever they wanted to go.
Now,
And we were in Jamaica, and we went to a cub pack, and there was a lot of poverty there. The kids didn't have any uniforms. They would show up for their meeting, and the leaders would pin the badges on the shirts, so whoever they had on, and then they'd hand them back in at the end of the day. So when Mom got home, the Cubs here had recently switched from green uniforms to gray uniforms, new uniforms. So all these green Cub uniforms were everywhere.
Yeah.
She gathered them all up, sent them down to the Cub pack. So they gave her an award. She won the Silver Pineapple.
That's what I was just going to say, because I read that somewhere. There's all kinds of awards, and silver is usually in the title.
Yeah, so that's the highest award in scouting in Jamaica.
And that's why she got the award, was helping with the uniform.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's go to something that everybody knows about in town, and that's the campfire blanket.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whenever the museum, and I should say that I volunteer with the Kingston Scout Museum, which is virtual 99% of the time, but there are times during the summer when we take the museum out to the community and set up a booth where there are people floating by, and we always bring the campfire blanket, and it's the first thing people come and just stare at it.
That's how you and I met.
That's right.
I saw the campfire blanket and I introduced myself and said it was my grandmother's.
That's right.
Yeah.
How many badges are on that blanket?
I don't know, but I can tell you
300 maybe?
the amount of work she did with that, because every so often there wasn't room, so she would take them all off.
Oh, really?
And sort them and realign them and sew them all back on. And she did that a number of times. She put a lot of work into it.
I'm trying to figure out all the stuff she did. There's only 24 hours in the day.
Yeah. And she was a night owl, too.
Oh,
She was.
Okay. That answers a big question.
Yeah.
One of the things I mentioned that I'm involved with the museum. And when we talk about preserving history, we think of museums doing that. And when I look around the room, and we happen to be sitting in the area where a lot of our museum artifacts are stored, and there's a lot of Jeannie in this room. And she basically was the first archivist for this museum, really, because there's the story of the 30 binders that constitute a lot of the history from her involvement in it. Was she a scrapbooker to start with, or is this something that she just picked up when she started doing Cubs?
I don't think it was specifically scrapbooking. She absolutely kept binders of photographs. And she had them meticulously labeled.
Yeah.
When she passed, they all got passed to my Uncle Ian and then got passed on to me a few years ago. When he moved, he downsized, so he didn't have space for them. So I have I keep them in Rubbermaid totes, but a lot of family photos. She absolutely...
I know that when we started up the virtual museum, we were trying to find a way to digitize all of these binders. Because for the folks listening, these are 3 ring binders, the big thick ones that are 3 inches at the rim. And there's just jammed with pictures of people and letters and flyers and all sorts of stuff that's in there.
Yes.
And we had a person who spent, I don't know how much time she took, but she took pictures of almost all of these bits and pieces inside the binders. And so we are about to release this as an exhibit on the virtual museum site. So we have taken the 30 binders and made 20 scrapbooks out of the 30 binders. And I went and counted them just to see how many artifacts or pictures or flyers was in there. There's over 3,000.
I believe that.
So I don't know how long it's going to take us to upload all those pictures. But they will be there for people to look at and to flip through and to... And the challenge in some of this is that some of these pictures and flyers and things that we have don't have any identification on them. Like, who's in this picture? When was this taken out? With Jean, she was meticulous and labeling things according to whatever year that were taken in, that sort of thing. But that's something that I know that a lot of people are looking forward to, have not had the chance to look at the binders themselves, but we'll see a virtual version of those binders. Now, the other thing that she spent a lot of time working on, and I was totally amazed when I read how this all evolved, and that's the book that's called Scouting Kingston, A History. Now, I don't know if you know how this all began. Do you?
I do. A couple of the other leaders that she worked a lot with, Andy Cleveland, Kathy Dunn, they put out a newsletter monthly. I think it was called Scouting Times. I could be wrong. But so just with news and things that were going on in the community. So she started doing a history of each group, and she put one in each monthly thing. So then that book is a compilation of all those stories that she'd written over the years.
She started writing one
on the
particular...
history.
I think she started with a group in Gananoque. And I read somewhere, and I think it was in the preface to the book, where she talks about going to Toronto and talking to someone who used to be involved with scouting in Gananoque before she was, and telling the story of how that all started up. And then the one story grew into 41 different stories of different groups that were active at the time in the Kingston area.
Yeah, she was writing them monthly for the Scouting Times.
Yeah, and it's really meticulous in the way it was written, and it's just an amazing book to read if you're into the history of particular groups.
Another example of how modest she was, there's one photograph of her in that book, and she's like the little person in the little corner of a group shot.
And the thing about it, too, is that when we were preparing some information for the digital version of her binders, the book didn't tell us much about her.
No, it doesn't.
There was virtually nothing in there about her. And so we had to search high and low, and we were able to find a lot of information subsequent to that. But that speaks to what you just mentioned. You did say that she was very humble, received a lot of different awards from scouting, from the community at large. How did she react at home when she got those awards? Did you hear much about them, or what was her attitude to them?
So I think that she talked to me a little bit more than other family, only because I was involved in the scouting when she did get a couple of the big awards. And I remember her... the newspaper was there for one of them, and I remember that she was upset because when you do the scouting symbol, right, you put all three fingers straight up.
Yeah.
But the interviewer and the photographer made her curve her fingers, and that's the picture they ran in the newspaper. And I remember how upset she was that the photograph that she was represented by was an incorrect symbol that she should have been doing. And I remember having that conversation with her, and she was like, no big deal about the award. She was just upset about how her fingers were not correct in the photograph that ran in the newspaper.
Why did they ask her to curve her fingers?
I don't remember. I don't know why she would have even agreed to have done it. She was so upset about it.
I've seen that picture.
Yes. Yes, so you know the picture I'm talking about. And I remember having the conversation with her about how upset she was that the photograph was a bad representation of the correct Scouting symbol.
What did it mean to you as a family to share her with Scouting for so many years? I mean, she must have been flying out the door on a regular basis to go to meetings or camps or whatever. And were your brothers involved in Scouting?
Yes, but not so much after I was in. I don't know about Ian, but Pat and Jamie were definitely involved. I don't know if Jamie went to Scouts or not. Pat certainly did. Yeah. Because he was friends with Tom and Letty Allen, were also leaders at the 14th, and their sons were chummy with my brothers.
It's all about friendships and hanging around with people you like.
Yep.
What about souvenirs and stories she brought back from her travels? Would she sit down with you when she got home, or just throw the things in a corner? And
well, she had her scout room, so anything that she brought home on her trip, she would add to her collection in the scout room. But never, she never boasted about things like that.
No, Tell us about this infamous room. I've heard about it.
Yeah,
it's my old bedroom.
It's a good thing you moved out.
So it was an extra. It was an extra room after I moved out, and so she just turned it into a room full of artifacts.
All the pictures and badges, and
she was proud of it.
Proud of it.
It
was a 3-bedroom house that they lived in down in Portsmouth Village, which is down near Kingston Penitentiary for those people that aren't in Kingston area. Yeah, a couple blocks away from there.
Yeah, a couple blocks away.
And my grandparents, they didn't share a bedroom. So Grandma had her own room with a single bed. So when I slept over, I slept in the room with Grandma. And then, so she had her bed, and then there was the extra bed for the grandkids. And then my grandfather had his own room. And then the Scouting room had a couch and shelves and shelves and shelves of...
And a desk.
Of books, and a desk with a typewriter so that she could work on that book or newsletter, whatever she was working on. And there were some plants in the corner. There were boxes of badges and pins, and there was photographs. I remember that picture in that room.
Yeah, you're pointing to a picture on the wall here in the museum.
Baden-Powell,
yeah, Lord Baden-Powell was hanging. I don't know if it was that actual picture, but she had a picture.
So it's probably the room looked something like this room, jam-packed with boxes and shelves and all sorts of artifacts.
There wasn't an empty space on the wall.
No.
Yeah, we still have some, but we rent this room, so
Yes.
can't do much with it. Well, that's good. In nearly every photo that I've seen, now I never had the opportunity to meet Jean, but in nearly every photo I've seen of her, she is smiling. What do you think that smile tells us about how she experienced things?
She was pretty optimistic about things. Yeah, you didn't see her get angry too often.
Always looking at the good side.
Yeah.
I only remember her getting angry with me one time in my life, ever. But I feel like she just found a lot of joy in Scouting, and that gave her a purpose, especially after she retired from work. Like, she was still very active, even right up until she died. She was still ice skating the month before she passed. So she
had a hip replacement, and she was rollerblading a month afterwards.
She just had to have a purpose, and I think that she really did find a purpose in Scouting.
Well, she got angry twice because there was the finger thing, right? Yes.
You're right, but she wasn't angry with me at that point.
I'm certain that Scouting has been blessed with many outstanding volunteers, and some may have contributed several decades to the organization, but luckily not that many whose name continues to inspire 25 years after her passing. Thank you both for giving us a peek into the family life that helped shape Jean Gillespie. Thank you.
I feel privileged to still talk about her 25 years after she passed.
Thank you.
Jean Gillespie believed that history mattered, especially local history, and especially the stories of young people growing into their communities. 25 years after her passing, her work continues to speak for her in the lives she touched, in the events she helped build, and in the records she preserved so those stories wouldn't be lost. My thanks to Alan and Jennifer for sharing their memories and helping us better understand not just what Jean did, but who she was. If you'd like to learn more about the Kingston Scout Museum and the ongoing effort to preserve this history, you'll find links in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend and consider rating and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others discover the show. This episode was recorded in February of 2026. I'll be back soon with another conversation.
The theme music for the podcast is Stasis Oasis, written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of the episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast at gmail.com. For details on upcoming guests, follow us on Facebook. The Kingstonian Podcast is hosted by Dave Cunningham and produced in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.